Hi, my name is Brian Melick, and I'd like to introduce you to some of the methods and approaches that I bring to the oud to create my voice. What's beautiful about the oud is that it's really kind of two instruments at once in respect to you control the airflow, so you're controlling the melodic capabilities of the drum, and of course you have the entire surface of the drum itself to create and to experiment with the percussive qualities. So what I did when I first came to the oud is I actually was coming to the oud as a beginning hand percussionist and I guess you could say seasoned drummer for at least several years. I started playing the oud in '85. So what I'd like to do is just sort of kind of walk you through how I kind of brought myself to where I am to this point in my life and my career with the oud. So being a drummer, the first thing I did was start exploring, the low end sound, which I find the fundamental pitch is off the side hole. Doesn't matter what shape oud, if it's a double chambered instrument, such as the udango 2 or the Giorgini or even the emboita, you would go to the lower chamber, or the larger chamber, I should say. So in respect to sort of the backbeat method of playing drums, if you will, I'll use the center part of my palm, pull my fingers back ever so slightly to create like a suction cup kind of effect over that hole to create the lowest fundamental sound by pushing the air out of the second hole. By doing that, I'm creating, I'll say, the kick drum. And then I'm going to use the first pads of my fingers to slap the shell of the drum to create the snare drum. So if you put those two together, you get the idea of a drum kit. So as I was exploring this drum, this unusual, beautiful, amazing drum, I became more and more intrigued as I started messing around with the shell, because as I said, I came to this as a drum set player. So that's kind of where I was approaching it from that kind of mindset. So, obviously, if you use the fingertips of your hand, you get a nice bright sound. Now, what's interesting is that if you rub the shell, you kind of get the idea of a ride cymbal. Or for a percussionist, it's like having a sand shaker or a cylindrical shaker, maraca, that kind of thing. So you put all that stuff together, you kind of get layers and layers and layers of textures, which is incredible. So you get the idea. So as I started developing my understanding of how to use the different surfaces of my hand on the oud, and as I started developing technique on other instruments, such as the conga, djembe, frame drums, I actually started to understand that we can use every part of the surface of our palm to create a different sound, different texture, therefore creating a larger voice, our musical voice on the drum. So if you take the split hand technique from India, which is putting your pinky, your ring finger, and your middle finger together, keeping your index finger by itself, and you rotate side to side, you get a totally different kind of sound. Now, if you add that to what I started with, the low and the low sound of using the side hole, and then the tips of my finger creating that snare drum, you get almost like a hi-hat kind of pattern. So you're getting the idea of where my head is. I'm actually exploring this drum, with the techniques that I've learned from other instruments. Taking that one step further and using each one of the fingers as an individual mallet, then you start to get even softer and more articulated strokes. So what I'm doing is basically just altering, because as percussionists, we're always altering our hands so that we're building strength in both and dexterity evenly between our hands, and in this case, our fingers. What I'm doing is this is my little drill. So I'm going to start with my right hand and with the ring finger, the right hand. So it'd be ring finger, middle finger, forefinger. And that's it, alternating them always. And there's a multitude of ways that you can take that and go through the universe with, all the different ways that you can create different combinations. But for right now, that's the example. Now you can incorporate your thumb, because in Brazil, they have this wonderful, the national drum of Brazil is the pandeiro, which is their tambourine. That's a circular technique. So we start with our thumb. So in this case, I'm going to use the side of my thumb, even into the meaty part of my thumb. Then I'm going to go up to the tip, back to the heel, and up to the tip. So you get this kind of a sound combination. So what's really beautiful about all of this is that you can hear every little part of our hand changes the texture, and therefore gives us more and more and more voice. Two other technique would be the heel tip technique, which is basically used on the conga drum. So it's a back and forth motion, heel, tip, heel, tip. And then the last one that I wanted to talk about is basically using the entire hand. That's the obvious, so I wanted to wait till the last bit for that. That's the obvious, but it's the wettest sound, because we're going to use the complete underside of our hand. We can use the entire surface of our palm and the underside of our fingers. So it's very, 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 very cool instrument in the sense that you can bring all this to the shell of the drum by then controlling the airflow and using those techniques over the holes. You can then create a multitude of layers of textures and sounds. I'll just give you a quick example of that. Now, in regard to the controlling the air now, that's another whole thing. To me, I humbly say that I think that the art of the Udu drum is really learning and developing ways to finesse the air. Because when you finesse the air differently, you then add another whole layer of different colors and textures and sounds. I'll give you an example. Most of us come to the drum and hit it. Well, messing around with the Udu and messing around with any instrument is how we develop new and different sounds. I found that we can actually, this is an air vessel, basically. So what happens is that if I seal the holes and I pull my hand away, I'm now going to draw the sound out of the instrument, and it's a softer sound. So it's really very, very unusual. Instead of pushing the sound in, we're pulling the sound out. The other thing that I found is that as I'm playing the low sound, basically in the side hole or the larger chamber of the instrument, if I move my hand ever so slightly over the second hole, I can drop the pitch down even further. Now, by doing that, now you're starting to really manipulate the air, and so you can create vibrato. Meaning you're pushing the air in. I can cancel the sound by pushing the air in. As soon as I hit the side hole, I'll push the air back in the chamber through the opposite hole. I hope you can hear that because it's really kind of interesting. It's almost like it creates tension and release, and that's what music is always based on, you know? And the last thing I want to introduce you to is a way that I found that I could create a very interesting quality to the drum by not actually even playing over the hole in the conventional way. I actually laid my hand on it one time and started tapping on my hand. You can see how sensitive the drum is, because all I'm doing is tapping on the back side of my hand that's covering the hole. So you get a very interesting texture by the sound of my skin hitting my skin, and then also pushing the air ever so slightly, because actually inside what's happening is my hands being pushed in over the hole. So as I open that up, as I roll my hand up, you're going to hear the texture change as well as the pitch change. Now what's really cool is that I don't even have to keep my hand on the hole. I can actually pull my hand right off the hole and find out that I can actually still move the air in the drum. Now, why that's interesting is because when you kind of think of all these different sounds that we kind of just explored here together as colors, sort of as like a palette of colors that an artist would use to paint a picture, we have all of these different interesting textures and sounds and colors to draw our audience in, to embellish an image in the song. I use that sound a lot at the beginning or the end, sometimes in the middle of a solo if I'm supporting someone. So I'll give you an idea of what I mean. You can actually hit it and it sounds like a drop of water.